The meeting of the City of Manassas Park Planning Commission will now come to order. Can you hear me? Okay. The second order of business, we will take the roll call. I would note that Mr. Trouting and Mr. Polk are not here, but Mr. Evans and Ms. Wykow, Witchell, sorry,
That's okay.
are also here. Cynthia.
Right.
We'll now have the invocation or moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For this evening's agenda, are there any additions or subtractions that we know of?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And we have before us the adoption of the minutes for March the 2nd, 2015.
Make a motion to approve it.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously for those present. Is there anyone here for item number 6 for citizen time? Is there anyone who wishes to make any comments for an item that is not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Our first item of business is a public hearing for a comprehensive plan amendment 1315 and rezoning 1316, the residences at Dominion Reserve. And
I just want to point out there's also 2 waiver requests associated with that.
okay. You are correct. There are 2 waiver requests of buffer reductions, one along the north buffer and one along the internal buffer for the proposed development. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Ms. Watson, did you want to give a brief presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. As stated, this is a comprehensive plan amendment, number 13-15, rezoning 13-16, and 2 waivers that have been referred to as A and B for the residences at Dominion Reserve. The comprehensive plan amendment is requesting a change from the designation of the City Center Redevelopment District to the Multifamily District. The rezoning encompasses 2 parcels, approximately 5 acres, from the I-1 zoning, industrial zoning district to the PUD, which is Planned Unit Development. Waiver A is requesting allowance of a trail, a fence, vehicle turnarounds, and utility crossings in the buffer. And then waiver B is for a reduction of the required 30-foot buffer between the residential development and the internal I-1 industrial parcel. This is an old map, but thank you, Prince William County Mapper, for providing these. It just gives you an idea of the location of the property. It is located at the northeast corner of the intersection with Manassas and Digital Drive. You'll see here is the Palisades project. This is the site. This is the Belmont Reserve project currently under construction. And then right on the south side of Manassas Drive is Prince William County. The current zoning for these 2 parcels is I-1 Industrial District. As I said, the long-range plan designation is City Center Redevelopment District. But one thing of note would like for you to see is that there is the PUD, Planned Unit Development, here at Palisades, at the Dominion Crossing, existing Belmont Station, and at Belmont Reserve. I thought it was worth noting. Here, this shows up a little bit better for you. The graphic is shaded, but it doesn't translate here as well, but this is the rezoning plat. This parcel here and this parcel here are the parcels that are requesting the change. This is Belmont Reserve right here. Then here is the parcel, and this parcel here are currently owned by Ryland, but within, if you might recall, back when Glory Hill proffer amendment came up in 2010, this property is to be conveyed to the city, and it will be conveyed before Belmont Reserve gets off bond. Here's a GDP of the general development plan of the proposal. As you can see, it is going to utilize this right in, right out onto Manassas Drive, and then it'll come around here. This property up here is, we affectionately refer to it as Lot 3, and it is the industrial parcel. Here's another rendering which looks much better than this. It translates much better a hard copy than it does here, but it gives you a little bit more of an understanding. Here on the corner of Digital and Manassas Drive is a little park area which will sit on top of an underground stormwater management facility. This will be fenced in with the faux black wrought iron fencing, and they'll have some amenities such as benches, some dog bag disposal stations, which I'm sure will come in handy, and trees and shrubbery and such. And then this graphic here shows the internal property, and if I can, this right here, this parcel right here is proposed to be developed as this. This here is the streetscape view, and on the top it is the Digital Drive streetscape, and I think they did a wonderful job with this. I must admit, it really gives the viewer an understanding of what will be developed. This is the Manassas Drive streetscape. Here you have this, on this side is the Belmont Reserve. Here's the ingress-egress point. It's right in, right out. And then you'll come down, and then here is Digital. They will also have, as the other developments have and is required in our comprehensive plan, they will be adorning Digital and Manassas Drive with the city center streetscape, trees and lights. I'm sure everyone's seen those at Belmont Reserve, and they look very nice, don't they? Thank you. Here is another graphic that just doesn't translate as well as it should, and I'm sorry for that. This is the proposed development. But what is something I want you to notice is these dots here are going to be connectors to a trail system that will that people can stay out of their car and walk to the VRE, and that is our hope. There is also, we'll have sidewalks that you could go to the VRE that way, but here will help connect these people that are residing in the Belmont Station project, but they could, losing my pointer there you go, but picks it up here and goes across here, cross Digital Drive, and goes between the Haverhill and the Palisades, the point at Park Station, and the Palisades projects, and then it just provides an easier route for them to get to the VRE station. Some of the strengths of this application is the underground stormwater and the opportunity for a public passive park, the extension of the pedestrian path to encourage VRE riders. There is a commitment for the buildings facing Manassas and Digital Drive that the first 2 floors will be brick, and then the potential increase for the customer base at the shopping plaza. A couple of the weaknesses, the public passive park area suggests a private park as designed. I think that it, from a planning perspective, it looks very nice, but it does lend itself to a private courtyard, if you would. There are no architectural commitments to the internal units other than the rear elevation renderings. But staff does recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to change the designation from the city center redevelopment to the multifamily. The rezoning to change the I-1 zoning district to the planned unit development with the proffer statement dated today, June 1st, and the waivers A and B to the Planning Commission. Mr. J. Duvon.
If I could just stop right there. One thing that I neglected to mention at the beginning is I do have a disclosure to make. About 11 years ago, I was an employee with Welch Colucci, and Mr. Devon actually was my supervisor 11 years ago. And I don't believe that it'll affect my ability to evaluate this case, but it is worth noting. And, I'm now employed in another facility and really don't have any interaction with the law firm. That's the first thing, and I just wanted to ask just a real quick question. If you could go back to the weaknesses.
Yes, ma'am.
PowerPoint.
Sorry, I was all set up. Sorry. I
Oh,
apologize.
sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarity on the second item, no architectural commitments to internal units other than the rear elevation.
Yes,
There's no proffer commitment to?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I meant.
Okay.
There are, the commitments for the brick and for the units facing Digital and Manassas Drive,
Mhm.
but to be at least the 2 floors,
Mhm.
the first 2 floors. But then in reading through, I did not see any commitments. Now, there's the rendering that is part of the package, and the rear rendering shows colored, I would assume vinyl, but other than that, it doesn't. It doesn't show what the internal units would be as far as the fronts or the sides.
Okay, and the renderings, is that on page 8 of the?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Oh, okay, and is that proffered? Is page 8 proffered, I
Yes,
guess?
ma'am.
Okay. And then the first weakness was, it has to do with, I guess, the designation. There's public park area, but it's surrounded by the units. Is that, so that it has the appearance of a private amenity and a use, I guess, as a private amenity?
Yes, I must admit, the way it's designed, I really, and I told them I really enjoyed I thought that they took great care in designing it. However, it does not lend itself to a open public park. They have committed to signage, but I don't know how how it will translate. There's a tot lot here, and then with all the landscaping around here, and because we had told them that they had to keep as much as they could, and especially no residential in the 40-foot buffer, then they brought everything closer internally, and that's why it sits right on top. But you can dispute it, but I think it lends itself more to a private park or courtyard. I keep coming
Private
up with the
open
word
space.
courtyard, but it's more of a private amenity.
Okay. Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Jay Duvon. I'm a little nervous. I'm thinking if I ever did anything bad to Commissioner Klein, this is her opportunity to get back at me, so. Hopefully not. In any event, we have both Dave DeMarco and Gary Chandler here from Kovnanian, as well as our engineer, Andrew Vinitsky, from Bowman Consultants. Let's see if I can work this. There we go. I think that Ms. Watson did a great job of going over the property. I'll try to do this briefly, but I'm sure most of you know this property, and I think she did a good job of describing it. It is zoned industrial today, and it's unproffered industrial, so that virtually any use that's allowed in the I-1 district would be allowed here. Some of those uses are building materials, sales yard, material sales, rock, sand, gravel, et cetera, equipment storage yard. While the building next to us the industrial building next to us I wouldn't call it unattractive. It's certainly an industrial building, but not bad. The point to make, I think, is that an industrial use of this property could be a lot less attractive if it was used that way under the current zoning, and that's the way it's zoned today. I think most people would agree that a residential use of this property probably fits in better with what the city has in mind for this corridor. And then as I think we got better graphics. I'm not sure how, but we did some
No, I appreciate
beefing
that.
up to these. But obviously, we're seeking to rezone this to the planned unit development to allow 120 2/2 condominium units. This graphic shows the surrounding area. We think it fits in very well with the Belmont Reserve townhomes, then transitioning over to the Palisades multifamily units. And then, of course, it fits nicely with Belmont Station. So we think it provides a nice transition as you head towards both the train station and city center.
Excuse me, I just want to point out that the Palisades is 304 apartments.
Mhm.
Those are the breakdown numbers for Walker Station across the street.
Right.
Just wanted
Okay.
to, yeah.
Yeah. Good point. And I think Ms. Watson did a great job of outlining how the pedestrian connection works, but it does provide an opportunity for both Belmont Reserve and Belmont Station to connect into this pedestrian network that's going to get you over to the train station. So we think that's a great opportunity. It was a suggestion from staff, and we were happy to accommodate. We think it's going to work very well. And keeping moving here, this is graphics of both the pocket park at the corner of Digital and Manassas Drive, as well as the internal park. And this gives you a good idea, I think, of the landscaping we're proposing. There we go. I'm having some trouble with this arrow. We think it's very attractive. However, we did get the comment that it looks exclusive from the vice mayor, and so we met with him earlier this evening. And what we're talking about doing is trying to take this line of sidewalk and eliminating that and curving it out into this parcel so that it comes very close to the Todd lot. So it makes it obvious that you can get from the Todd lot into this park and then continue on to the park. It wasn't our intent to make it look exclusive, certainly not on the ends, but I can understand where somebody might interpret the graphic that way. So we're committed to, and what we do probably is eliminate, there kind of comes and goes, eliminate this straight sidewalk and curve it out like this so that it comes up against the Todd lot. I'm using my left hand, and I'm not real good with my left hand. In any event, we think it'll be inviting for folks that are using the Todd lot. And these are the city center design elements. Obviously, we are requesting a comp plan change to high density residential, but we certainly did look at the city center design elements. We think we are doing the unified streetscape with both the landscaping and the city center style streetlights. along both Manassas Drive and Digital Drive, and we think that's going to provide nice continuity, as Ms. Watson mentioned. We also did our best to integrate our open space and park areas. We've also worked on accessibility for both pedestrians and bicycles with the trail and the sidewalk connections that we talked about a moment ago. It's obviously accessible to VRE, and that's, we think, one of the draws of this project. And then we're doing a residential unit type that we think reflects market design and provides a variety of housing offerings within the city. So we think we're hitting those elements. Ms. Watson went over these elevations and streetscape. We think it's going to turn out very, very nicely. These graphics came out a bit better, but you can see Digital Drive at the top and then Manassas Drive at the bottom. And then in that Manassas Drive graphic, you can see Manassas Drive going up the edge here. So that's what we're anticipating. And then these are the proffered elevations. Ms. Watson's correct. These are the elevations on the high visibility fronts at the bottom. That would be Manassas Drive and Digital Drive. And then the end of the units would be brick that either face Manassas Drive or face Digital Drive. There are some end units that end up facing that direction. These brick faces on the units are optional for any of the units. So the internal units, if the purchaser chooses, could add brick to the front of the units. Architecturally, the units are the same. They don't necessarily, the interior units wouldn't necessarily be brick unless the customer chooses to make them that way. But architecturally, the bay windows and whatnot, and the roof features would continue whether you're using brick or not. Correct, David? Yeah. Okay. So this is the streetlight detail. I know you're familiar with these streetlights, but that's what we're committing to. This is a detail of the fence. And this is a screening fence really on the north side of the project between us and the remaining industrial property. And that's a board and batten fence with lattice on the top and then brick piers along there to provide an attractive and sturdy barrier there. And then this is an example of the seating arrangements. These were benches is what we'd use in the parks. This is kind of a site summary. I was thinking we had a slide that covered parking. I'm sorry, I bounced right across it. And this indicates the requirement for these units. At the top there is 1.5 spaces per unit. We're actually providing 2.3 spaces per unit. And then we are not counting any of the parking for the park. That's all separate. And we've actually added 10 spaces to the parking for the park. So there should be ample parking for folks that choose to visit the park. This is more of a summary of the things really we've already talked about, although we do have 30% open space within the project. And then project highlights, we are restriping Digital Drive at the intersection with Manassas Drive to provide 2 lanes outgoing from Digital onto Manassas Drive. One's a dedicated right turn lane, and the other would be either a second right or a left turn lane. So 3 lanes rather than the existing 2 today. And when you think about all the units that are farther down Digital Drive, I think it makes sense to provide as many lanes as possible coming out of there. And it also allows more people to flow through the intersection at the signal. We are also, as Ms. Watson talked about earlier, we are grading, seating, landscaping, and providing seating and constructing sidewalks in the Central Park. We're going to make some modifications to that to make it more inviting for the folks who would be using it. We are also maintaining that Central Park. The HOA, we've committed the HOA to maintain that park. So we're both developing the park and we're maintaining the park in the future, which we think is quite a benefit. Those elevations that we talked about are proffered, and we are making a $1.8 million public facilities contribution. We do have the proffered streetscape and street lighting along Manassas and Digital Drive, which matches City Center, as we talked about. And we are providing, this is the park at the corner of Digital Drive and Manassas Drive, which will have seating, the dog station, and shade trees that we talked about. We also, as I indicated, added 5 additional spaces on Christopher Drive, and that's the road that comes out as a right in, right out on Manassas Drive, and it serves currently Belmont Reserve, and it will serve our project as well. And then one of the benefits certainly is developing this as a proffered residential use as opposed to an unproffered industrial use. And that's really all we have. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. As I indicated, we've already had some discussions about how to improve that Central Park and make it more accessible to the public, and we're certainly committed to doing that. Happy to answer questions, though.
Thank you, Jay. If I could just go first, I do have a number of questions.
Okay.
I guess my first one is when you talked about proffering the brick fronts for the architectural elevations along Digital Drive and Manassas
Mhm.
Drive. What about the fronts that front onto the public park?
That's an interesting idea. That's not proffered currently. That is an option, as I indicated, for a purchaser. That's something we'd have to talk about and look at.
Oh, okay, and then I know that there have been comments, and I'd actually in the past when I looked at these commented as well that the park or the public park does appear in the design to look like a private amenity.
Mhm.
And you had mentioned that there was a proposed, I guess, alteration of the sidewalk design so that it bends more into the
Yes.
public park.
Um,
If we could just.
Sure.
Make sure we just got that.
The thought was to take this sidewalk that currently runs straight and bow it out like this.
Mm-hmm.
The tot lot is roughly about here, so that this curved sidewalk would get to the tot lot, so it'd be easy to get from the tot lot and follow this sidewalk into the project.
So it's
Get
not cut
rid of
off
this
so much.
barrier here, both the sidewalk and the trees, and pull it out so it makes it obvious that you can come from this area of the park into this area.
Okay.
And we're also going to use signage that says, this is all a public park. We talked about doing signage along Manassas Drive at this location, which is a place that you can go straight into the park, and something similar to that along Digital Drive so that you could get straight into the park. We're also looking at these spaces, and these spaces over here would be signed for parking for the park only.
Okay. If I could just, I have to refresh my memory, the portion of the park that's off-site, is that currently owned by the city or owned by an adjacent developer? Is it owned by?
It's currently owned by Ryland,
Correct.
Belmont
Okay.
Reserve.
Oh, okay. And you would do that development under an agreement with the adjacent developer? How does that work?
Well, presumably, the adjacent developer is proffered to donate that park to the city,
Correct.
so that we would, in all likelihood, not work in the park
Until the
until the
transfer's taken
city owned
place?
it. Yes.
Okay.
And actually, we can't get site plan approval, I believe is the case,
Mhm.
That's in the proffers.
until the park is transferred to the city.
Okay.
So we can't go forward hoping that the city gets the park. The park actually has to be owned by the city before we can go forward.
Okay.
Proffer 6 speaks to this final site plan approval shall not be granted until conveyance of the parcels to the
Okay.
city.
Okay. And now the developer would maintain the park amenities, or the homeowners association, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And so the applicant originally constructs the park.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the city retains the liability for use of the park, is that right?
Well, it's a city-owned facility, so to the extent that the liability flows from ownership, yes.
And I guess that's where the confusion lies, or where my nervousness lies, is that it is a public park, but it really does kind of look, walk, and talk like a private recreational amenity, because the walkways come straight out of the doorways, kind of into the park.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the design, actually the design of the landscape grounds looks very nice, but it's just, I guess if somebody were to fall and break their, if a child were to fall and break their arm, the city is still liable for the amenities that are on there that they, that somebody else is doing. How does that work? And maybe,
To be honest with you, we think if somebody gets hurt, they're coming after everybody. To be quite candid with you, they're going to come after us. They're going to come after you. And there's been a little bit of discussion about. I think our HOA is going to have to carry some insurance relative to that park, but we don't. We're still trying to figure out what that's going to cost and whether how much of that is feasible, whether we can accept all the liability for that or not. We need to get a better handle on that part of it. That's something that's come up pretty recently, frankly, and within the last week, and we haven't been able to fully explore that on two levels. One, the biggest one is, can the HOA absorb the cost? In other words, we need to get a handle on the cost. That's the best way I can describe that.
Can they even be responsible for it on land they don't have?
Yeah, there's some question about that too. In other words, can you insure against any liability on property that you don't own? I mean, we need to get a handle on that.
I was just thinking of it from the perspective of, usually when the city develops a park or puts in a park, they have a certain standard that they maintain in order to maintain their insurance limits for public use. If a separate entity is putting in standards, and I don't know, I mean, we're not at that level of detail yet, but for example, for park authorities or public park, they have a certain standard of bench, they have a certain, and that standard is adhered to so that they can maintain their insurance, that it holds up to wear and tear that you would typically see for public use. There's that angle as well, and I think this is something that's unique to this development that I know I haven't quite wrapped my head around in terms of how the whose responsibilities are divided up between the developer and the city. So that's one question. We can kind of leave that to one side, and I'll roll through just a couple of other questions. If we go to the waiver for the outside edge next to the existing industrial lot,
yes,
the waiver request, there's a trail in there, and then there's some landscaping as well, and then there's a fence. In your proffer statement on page 4, it says basically that the landscaping shall be in accordance with the City of Manassas Park Public Facilities Manual and subject to the waiver identified before. What happens with the fence if the waiver is somehow, I guess I want a comfort level that regardless of what happens with the waiver, we would still have an expectation of the fence the way it's shown as designed. Is there a way to maybe clarify the proffer so that it...
Well, I could explain that because it is code, and the code that of screening, so that even if the waiver wasn't granted, a fence would still be required per code.
But would it be that fence? The one that we see?
It is at the discretion of the zoning administrator.
It would be nice to be in the property.
we can clarify. We can clarify that.
If you could just, it's.
Sure.
I think it's just wordsmithing, but that would be a good thing.
Our intent is to provide it regardless.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then my next
The
question.
encroachments at this point are very minimal. I mean, they're really just these two turnarounds is really the main encroachment. And then, of course, having the trail go through there. But I think that's something everybody wants, frankly, because it makes the connection into Belmont Reserve and Belmont Station and allows those folks to get to the train station. So it seems like a win-win, frankly.
Yeah, I know when the application came in, and I was looking at the plans, I think in general, that's probably the only logical place to put the trail and still have it connect and be kind of a good cross through to get to the train. The buffer is a very necessary element because there is that industrially developed property, and there is an awful lot of activity there. So the more buffer, the more transition you can get, the better it is for the future residents. And then just this is just another detailed question. When you look at the proffer statement on the last proffer, it talks about garage parking not being converted, and that's a standard, proffer condition, so that, when you're in a unit
Correct.
like this, a 2/2 condo, you don't have somebody who gets rid of their parking in order to, add living space. And I'm just wondering, because a lot of times the homeowners association won't be as diligent about enforcing that. It really depends on the activities of the board members. Is it possible to maybe structure this proffer so that the city would have the ability to enforce that proffer, if the homeowners association did not do that?
Oh, that's a good question. We have.
There's a proffer number 20 here.
I think to be honest with you, I think we've done that. We've given, in another instance, I'm not sure if it was a condominium
I guess it's
situation.
it's if they fail to do so, can they? And again, it may just be wordsmithing to connect, to connect the two to make it clear that
Sure.
no garage conversions can take place, and the city can also enforce that.
I guess it'd be enforcing it as provided in proffer number 20.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, to connect the two.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay. Okay, I think that's the last of my questions for now. Do you have any questions or comments?
Just going back, I just want the park area there,
Mm-hmm.
the idea. I would like to see how you're going to work that sidewalk in to kind of join that together a little bit. And Christopher Drive, on the street lighting that's on
Yep.
Manassas and Digital, do we have the same type of street lighting going up to the park?
I'm not aware, that wasn't part of our project. That's part of Belmont Reserve over here. In other words, they proffered to make this connection, and it's currently their property, and they proffered the tot lot. So, to be honest with you, my guess would be if it's not there today and they didn't proffer it, there's no plan to put it there. I'm hesitant to speak for them, but perhaps Vanessa would know. I don't think the proffers address that.
No, they don't. And when Mr. Duvon's assistant came in, I said, we need to add a couple of more lights, and we need to light up the area a little bit better, because
Well, that does make sense, because that's a fair amount of vacant ground that, without some lighting,
yes.
could be a dark place,
And even
which is very inviting to some people.
yes, and even with the expectation would be that the park would be closed at dusk, but still you need to have some type of security lighting.
Yeah, it just catches my attention. I don't see anything even on your side of the development there going up.
Correct.
If we're taking the sidewalk up, there's nothing on either side, and that's a little bit of walk with no lighting.
You mean along here?
Yes, sir. From Manassas Drive up.
Okay.
Yep.
I think we've got,
Yeah, we need
this
to
sidewalk
put a-
connects along here.
Yeah, we need to put a couple of lights there, for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, I don't think that's an issue, is it? Getting some more streetlights in there?
We can certainly look at that and see where we can put them. I don't know that I don't know that it's important that it's be the city center lighting. That lighting detail is very expensive.
Do you have any internal lighting in your site? Or maybe you can look at what Belmont Reserve has, any internal lighting to
We'll look at, there should be some internal lighting that we can.
maintain some
Sure.
consistency.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
We had already discussed in meetings that there'd probably be a couple of more of the city center lights. And after we get into site plan, we'll be able to gauge that more thoroughly. I do want to let you know that the revised proffer statement dated June 1 just came in a few minutes before the meeting started, and so we have not fully vetted this document, but just wanted you to know that. And also in the very back, attachment G is what the applicant has added that speaks to the,
I think we've got it in here. There we go.
there you go. I didn't see that when you were going through. I must have looked down or something, but I just wanted to point that out, because there's some other units that really should have the brick sides as well. So just seeing this for the first time and not having a chance to fully vet it, I just wanted to point that out to you.
We were just trying to be clear that what we were talking about was, I'm losing my pointer here. There we go. That we were talking, when we talked about the end of a unit, we were talking about this end and this end. These units are 20 feet apart, so you're really not going to be able to see unless you're driving along and you stop here and look up between the units. So these are really the high visibility ends, we thought. And then these two end units as you come in, the entrance off Digital, and then this end unit over here. So we were really just trying to clarify that. And of course, the fronts, that's pretty obvious. So we thought the proffer was a bit ambiguous when we read it a second or third time, so we thought it made sense to have an exhibit just to remove any uncertainty or misunderstanding. Which is
I
different
have
than
to
what you're
agree
saying.
because
Excuse
I
me.
had thought that the architectural proffers were for all of the units in the development, so I'm glad you clarified that. But I guess in terms of the public park, aren't those also publicly visible for architectural elevations? Or at least the ones, the unit stick that's on the end that you can kind of see from Manassas Drive as you look back? You know, it would be good to have at least some of those also adhere to the brick fronts or the architect, so that it's not so, if none of the owners,
You mean
choose
these units?
choose the brick, fronts as the option, then you have kind of all brick on the street, and then suddenly it's all vinyl along the public park, where it's where
Right.
they're very close up on the public space there.
That's something we'll have to talk about for sure. Figure that out.
In terms of, I know this is a comprehensive plan amendment, and you've identified some of the elements of the city center, which are fairly persuasive argument for, making the change in the comprehensive plan from industrial to residential uses, especially as we go into the city center. And I know, I don't know that this is anything I'm going to fall on my sword over, but has there been any thought to the pocket park putting some kind of an element, just for the lack of a better term, public art, or some feature that draws attention to this is kind of a part of the city center? It may even be something that makes the development stand out, if nothing else, for marketing purposes. For example, Manassas Park Station, I think, has some kind of a feature at the beginning that kind of draws it to the development, just to kind of set it out, so people don't mistake it as, well, there's this long line of townhomes and then you're in the city center. I don't have anything specific that I could point to, but in terms of a park, it's a small space. It's an opportunity for people walking, and we're actually getting more pedestrians walking up and down, which is a good sign for the city center. But something to a focal point for them and for the development as a whole. It's not. It's just a suggestion, to tell you the truth. It's not something that's going to make or break the development, but I think it does kind of speak a little bit more clearly to the comprehensive plan elements.
Sure.
That would be, my 2 cents worth.
It's certainly something we can take a look at. If you recall, this park does have the faux wrought iron fence around it, so it's be fairly elegant looking facility from the outside. But we can certainly talk about, I guess I'm at a bit of a loss. Some
I
people
don't know,
might call me culturally deprived anyway, so I'm not sure I'm the right one to come up with something there. But
I'm sorry, Julie. I just agree with what Julie's saying there. If there was something that was a center of attraction in that little section there that draw people to that,
sure.
because that's going to be a very popular corner.
Right.
And
It's kind of a nice place for some focal landscaping. I'm not sure, the public art, I don't know.
It doesn't even really have to be art. I was just thinking about Manassas Park Stations. It doesn't have art, but it has some kind of feature, something, that just says, here you are, you're at Manassas Park Station. Something
Sure.
along those lines that's thematic with the architecture and maybe kind of points to a little higher standard because you're going into the city center. Something to consider.
Sure.
And you might want to, put a place marker for that in the generalized development plan. So,
Mhm.
And maybe work something out, with the city planner later on as to what those details are.
Sure.
Because of that corner, we have to be very careful with sight distance.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
And then I guess one final question, where the pedestrian trail is, and I know this has come up with other trails that are kind of throughout the community that get into the train station. Is there any way to light that? People who walk to the train back and forth, especially in the winter months when it gets dark really early, is there a way to light that? And I know that's a common complaint where there's a fairly well-used trail that goes from the train station back into all the rest of those developments. It's lit partially, but not completely.
Overhead lighting or the low lighting, or any thoughts on that?
Either one.
Bollard style?
Yeah, maybe a bollard style. I would maybe leave that for later development because there
Okay.
may be an issue with, can it be knocked over by mowers or, one or the other of those.
Yeah. Should be-
Just to kind of, so people can see the path and, feel a little safer
Mhm.
when they go.
Yeah, and that's something likely the HOA would be maintaining, so we would be concerned about it being durable as well.
Right.
From that perspective, because we don't want them to have to be replacing a bollard as an example, every month or two. So
Right.
that's something I can certainly take a look at, I would think, and see what makes sense in there. We want it to be fairly low, obviously, because there's homes around it, and theoretically, it would be lit most of the night. So we don't want it too bright, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I.
But enough so that you can see your way through there,
See your
and
way
it's
home,
safe.
yeah.
Yes.
Especially in the winter months, January, February. I know it's a common complaint in other trails that go back and forth from the train station that it's just dark enough to where it gives you a little bit of a
Shadows and all that stuff. yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I think that's all our questions for now. Now I think we could open up the public hearing for any speakers that might be in the room.
Thank you.
Are there any speakers who wish to speak to this application? If you'd like
Yes,
to
ma'am,
come-
there's one. I have two written comments that I would like to interject as well.
We just need to get their name and address for the record.
Your name and address for the record.
My name is Jennifer Young, and I live at 9219 Christie Drive in Manassas Park, Virginia,
Okay.
which is in Belmont Station. And one question I had was for the fence that they were talking about between the industrial and the residential. I know that industrial, I've lived in Belmont Station for 16 years. The industrial park is really, really loud. They start like 5 or 6 in the morning. So even having like a sound buffer would be nice as well.
And that's something that we can perhaps ask Mr. Devon to address later on. I do agree with you, though. I live in that area, and they start very early, and they are fairly loud, and even sometimes before 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, and I know my husband has chronic migraine syndrome, so every morning that's an issue.
Well, that's probably a violation of the
Noise
noise ordinance
ordinance.
if it's that early.
It's pretty early. It's
Yeah,
first that starts, then the train, then the building on each side for Belmont Reserve and for Domain Crossing construction, and it's been going on. That's been going on for a while. So I know Belmont Reserve started in 2013, and the other one I think started, can't remember before or after. But also I had heard that Kay Havinian had also purchased some land right there on the corner of Signal View and Manassas Drive, and it's supposed to be starting in 2017. I heard. Didn't know if anybody had heard anything about that.
That'd be in the county.
Townhome.
That's property in the county, so I have I don't have any idea of that.
I had heard that it was supposed to be starting 2017 of townhomes right there.
It would have to go through a rezoning process, though, because I don't think that's zoned for residential right now.
I'm not even, the person I heard it from was the sales manager at at Belmont Reserve, so I'm not even sure how accurate his information was, so.
Well, we'll get notice, whenever they do a rezoning adjacent to city property, like, or city boundaries, we'll get notice. So we'll know that we haven't gotten that yet, though.
Okay. And I've noticed that there's a flood of townhomes in the area. It seems like the market's getting flooded with the townhomes. Is there any single-family homes that are coming up in the near future for Manassas Park?
Not single-family homes. That takes more land, and we just, this parcel actually is, other than the city-owned property and then a couple of vacant properties that are slated for commercial, this is really the only property that's left. And at 5 acres, it would not yield.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that was a couple of concerns of a couple people that could not be here, was that because they're going to be selling their home soon, and that the market's going to be flooded with townhomes, and they're just a little afraid of the.
Well, this unit type is called, it has a couple different types, names. It's stack condos or 2-over-2s. And so they are the two floors, and they're not like apartments. They're more like a small townhouse.
Yeah, I just actually went into a property the other day that was the 2-on-2.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's great for, it's a good unit for young families or
It is,
more
it definitely is.
seasoned people that don't have kids, things like that. But I'll get you my card, and
Okay.
if you have any other questions, you certainly can call me at any time.
My-
And when you hear rumors or anything, just, give me a call and I'll let you know.
No problem. And one question I did have was, are they going to do anything with the schools to keep up with the development?
Well, the schools are upstairs talking right now with the governing body. So I know that they are very well aware of the new development and the existing enrollment that they have now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to share that we had gotten 2 online comments. One was from the owner of the Lot 3 industrial lot, and he is writing, and I've given you a copy, which we will make part of the record, but they are writing to express their opposition to the proposed rezoning. They are there as an industrial property, and they said that since that time, all the land surrounding us has been developed as residential property. And so they are against it, and that is going to be part of the record. Should I read the whole thing?
If she wants.
Would you like me to read the whole?
Sure, if you want to
It's
do it.
not that long, but.
Sure.
Okay. Our neighbors do not support our tenants and seem to feel free to dump trash and debris on our property. Our only salvage was the fact that the 2 lots between us and Manassas Drive remained industrial and would hopefully be developed one day as industrial or retail projects. Our building has been generally fully occupied and provides a good home to local businesses, helping generate tax revenue for the city. Building more houses on lots 1 and 2 won't do that. In addition, it will result in our industrial building, which was built before all the housing on Digital Drive, being the only non-residential development on the street. This is certainly not what we contemplated when we bought the property and built our building, and we don't believe the continued building of houses around our building is a wise decision. Accordingly, we request that the applicant's request be denied. Also, there is a 3-page letter, if you will, to the Planning Commission from Mark Shuffler, located at 9402 Wilcoxon. And he talks about the Route 28 needing to be fully funded, and people that know Mark understand that he is passionate about the traffic issues around the city, but in the county and the city of Manassas and how it impacts the residents of Manassas Park. He is very passionate about that, and I applaud his commitment to trying to be a voice to finding resolution. He also talks about recommending higher density development, and he speaks specifically to a development called Potomac Club Apartments with wrapped parking garage, which is I drive past every day over my neck of the woods. And then he recommends that the monetary contributions be at least $25,000 per unit. And then he references Loudoun County Eastern Capital Intensity Factor Guidelines, which I'm sorry I didn't look that up. He recommends an analysis to be completed to determine the long-term cost to the city for this development, and recommends that the city purchase the properties across the street that are in Prince William County and convey that to the park, which would be nice, but and he's also wanting to promote bike and pedestrian usage to City Center, Signal Hill Park, and the VRE. And he provides a very nice graphic for his solutions to those issues.
Okay, is there anyone left wishing to speak to this case before the public hearing is closed? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Before we entertain any motions regarding the case, are there any final questions for the planner or for the city attorney? Okay. Here's my thought. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and the motion is going to be for a short deferral. And let me state my reasons for that. I'd have to ask are we having a July Planning Commission meeting?
Well, actually, the next hearing, Planning Commission date would be July 6th. That is the day after a long July 4th weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and our birthdays. Mm-hmm. So, yes, we were born the same day, but a couple of years apart. But honestly, I didn't know if that would be a good day to have another Planning Commission meeting, so I was looking at the possibility of, if we needed one, to have one on July 13th, which would be the following Monday.
Better for me.
Okay, yeah, I think that would work for planning commissioners. Is that sufficient time? I understand that tentatively there's a governing body hearing of the 21st of July. Is that
First.
right?
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Does that spacing work?
Yeah, we used to do it where we'd have the planning commission would do it on Monday, and then the very next day the governing body would hear it, and then they decided they wanted to have at least a week apart,
Sure.
to kind of think about it.
Sure,
So
to smooth out the rough
you
edges.
provide
yeah.
that, you get 8 days with that schedule you have there.
Yeah. Here's my thought, and here's the reasoning for my motion to defer is I think that the application does have some merit, and there does seem to be an argument to perhaps transition to a comprehensive plan that indicates residential uses versus industrial uses, because and I understand the property owner's comments regarding he's got an existing industrial use, but the area is developed around him, and times have changed. The city center, is something that the city has a vested interest in, and the development, the way it's proposed, I think has a potential for adding value to, the areas that surround the city center. But there are a lot of questions, and kind of, the devil is always in the details, and especially in terms of the public park that's kind of embedded in the development. And I'd like to see if we can maybe go back and look at the development, and maybe, Vanessa, if you could, chat with the applicant further about the nuts and bolts. And I understand that they're offering to develop the park and maintain it, but work out what is the liability associated with that, and what is the insurance, what is the city's liability in terms of, accepting or the improvements that take place. it sounds like if we do the short deferral, we wouldn't really knock anything off of the schedule in terms of the governing body meeting. But I think that's something that we do have to pursue. In addition, I'd also like to see if there's a possibility of doing more architecturally, more brick fronts in areas that are going to be seen, not just the areas that they indicate, because I really was under the impression, and it was probably just me speed reading or something, that most or all of the units were going to have those brick fronts.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. And so I'd like to see that increased in other areas, so that it doesn't look like you have a very nice facade, a fairly high quality architectural treatment on the outsides, and then when you go into the park, you're looking at a sea of vinyl. And so I'd like to see if we can maybe concentrate on that further. We had talked about a couple of little, kind of wordsmithing fixes to the proffers regarding the waiver being tied to the fence, and maybe, adjusting that a little bit. And the last proffer where the city would have the ability to enforce, garage conversions if the Unit Owners Association doesn't do that. And I think that's something that we could, that maybe we can concentrate on more. Are there other suggestions for?
No, was that a motion? If you want,
it's the world's longest motion, yes, but the motion is actually to defer, and that was
Right.
what my suggestion.
and I would second that. And the same comments on the architectural design, especially within that area, that park. I kind of like that streetscape theme that we've got going on, and I think it'll bring that area up. But I would concur with you on that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye. All those opposed? None?
So the public hearing has been deferred to a date certain of July 13th.
Well, the public hearing's been closed, so it would just be the action to be taken.
Yeah,
would
the
be-
action will be deferred, right. And if we can, and we can leave the record open for further comments if there are any further written comments, or any further written submissions to consider.
So we'll come back to you with the new and improved, and tweaking these items that you have discussed.
Right, to provide some further clarification.
Further clarification, excellent.
These are the salient points, I believe.
Sidewalk, oh, yes. Yeah.
Now,
have
do
to
I
read
need to
this
make a
me.
follow-on motion for the comprehensive plan amendment, and my intent was for the whole series of applications, including the waivers. Do we
Okay.
need to follow that back up?
What was the nature of your was that the nature of your motion
The
then?
motion is to defer decision on the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning, the waivers of the north buffer and the internal buffer to a date certain of July the 13th,
Okay.
in order to provide further clarification.
Right, and you're absolutely right, because you can't consider the rezoning until you have the comp plan amendment approved,
Right.
and you can't consider the waivers until the rezoning's approved.
Exactly.
So you're absolutely right.
Like falling dominoes, yep.
We'll have to make sure everybody's available for the 13th. So
Okay,
I'll send out emails.
okay. If we move on to our second hearing, which is City Code Section 31-27, off-street parking requirements update.
All right. You know, walk on that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a general nudge. They need to update the architecture and stuff.
Okay. We have a new audience. See, we're not used to having all these people in our. meetings here. This is amazing. All right, we have before you, let me just get to it. Here we go. We enlisted the services of a group of planners called the Berkeley Group, and they were in the public sector before, and they and so we went ahead and this gentleman, Darren Coffey, had been in the public sector and private sector, and so we enlisted his help in updating our parking regulations. I worked with him on several iterations, and we got comfortable to where we could come before you. This is the parking requirements that is in the zoning ordinance right now. The underlined text is what was added, and of course, what was there was stuff that we kept, and then anything that was struck through was is proposed to be deleted. This is a relatively minor revision. We talked about what we wanted to do was really, as Ms. Klein, you spoke of earlier, just clarifying some wordsmithing, and with the shared spaces, we wanted to update some language. We wanted to speak specifically to some things that through zoning enforcement we found that we needed some clarification, and so you'll see updated language such as charging stations with the electric cars needing that. I think that's that just provides opportunities for some commercial ventures to look at putting some charging stations in their parking lots. I know over at Stonebridge they have 3 charging stations, but they're packed away in such a place that you'd have to really go searching for them to find them. And the electric cars that I've seen don't use them. So I've never, as much as I've been over there, I've never seen them used, but they are there, and for people to use. There's we talked about. We added more language on the handicap parking. We wanted to make sure that was in there, and we also added parallel parking, which we have at right outside our city hall, but that wasn't in there. And wanted to provide a graphic just for more understanding. Every parking regulations that I looked at for doing my investigation and research, everybody is into graphics. I love graphics. It helps make things so much easier. So I really enjoy them, and in any place I can, I try and interject them. One of the reasons that this became necessary was because there was a concern about the residential parking. Could you shut that door? I'm sorry. But the issue is because of some of the residential developments that have been developed through the years, and quite frankly, the parking, people have a lot more than 2 cars these days, and so it has become a problem. We wanted to balance that because you can't accommodate for a whole fleet of vehicles, but because you don't want to asphalt all your property. A sea of asphalt is not attractive, and it also hurts the environment. So we wanted to strike a balance to try and increase it enough to where it would be a little bit easier. We have been working with every applicant that's come in here, and especially the applicant that just left. he will tell you that we, negotiated hard for more parking, more parking, more parking. So we are really trying to make sure that we can strike that balance with the community's needs and also with the needs of the environment as well. So if you have any questions about this text, I'd be more than happy to answer it if I can.
Did we address, I can't remember, but I've been reading so many different things recently. I'm noticing that people are bringing like their boats and stuff, and they'll keep them covered, and they just park them, but they're like moving them from place to place. I've noticed that on Carondelet near Manassas Christian school. There's this one boat. It'll be in our neighborhood in a couple of weeks, and it's like I don't know who owns it, but they just keep moving this boat. Like from place to place.
It's a 10-day
It's a 10-day thing.
thing on the moving, but Carondelet was specifically there's parking restrictions on there, so the only time they can park is in the weekends and after hours.
It's there all the time.
It's not there during the day, I don't think, is it?
Yes, it is.
Then I'll have somebody check on that. We can address that issue.
Yeah, it's
Because
just
that's
like,
why the signs are set for that time period to prevent that.
and it's just, I've noticed that people are kind of sneaky about that. I mean, like you said, I think they know that, so they're just like moving this stuff from different areas. And I actually followed someone one day. So, I mean, it sounds, terrible, but if you're not going to use it, why don't you rent something instead of, parking it on the street like that? But, sorry.
We do have rules in place with our code for width and length, so that our property code official can go out and measure, and trust me, she does that a lot.
I know there's some, because my daughter was at a friend's house, I think it was Arnie's Court, someone's got a trailer, and I could not, they have like, it was so wide, I could barely get through there to take her to her friend's house, and they actually had the nerve to put like little cones so people wouldn't hit the trailer, and this is a work trailer. And I'm just nervous because if someone's house caught on fire, or if an ambulance or anything, there's no way that you could get through this because of this gentleman has it parked there, and I think that takes a lot of nerve for you to do that because you never know when something's going to happen. And I mean, I'm noticing little things like that because if I'm taking my daughter someplace, I mean, it just seems like I always see little things like this in the neighborhood.
Well, that's why you need to call me or email me anytime you see something that is questionable to you, because I will have it investigated, or I might be able to explain in a way to you, one or the other. But I will, you need to have me on your speed dial.
Okay, or take a picture. I mean, if you saw this.
That's what, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's what I do for my HOA. In fact, they got, yesterday, or no, today's Monday. Yes, this morning I was like, I take a picture, have someone doing motor vehicle repair in the visitor spaces. So I took a picture of him.
Yeah.
Probably not the smartest thing to do, but I did it and sent it to the management office. We have an on-site management office, but what you can do is send it to us, and we can also, because we're also very dialed in with the different HOAs as well, so we can talk to them too.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because I know we address a lot of things, but a lot of things are kind of out of our control sometimes. But it's just, I mean, like I just go back. I just want to live in a neighborhood where you need the minimal cars. And I mean, another thing I noticed in Carondelet is near the Manassas Christian School. There's this yellow truck. And I mean, or somebody will bring their bread truck home or whatever and they'll just park it there, a business vehicle. I mean, I just don't think that's right. I feel like people will start just parking everything they can on these streets. And I mean, it's frustrating to me as a homeowner, and I'm sure the other people around, they don't like that either. But to me, leave it at, if you're using that for employment, leave it at your business. I mean, if you're, you know what I mean? I just don't think that stuff should be in a neighborhood. I think it makes our neighborhood look junky, to be honest, and I don't like that. And it creates other problems too. But yeah, I have followed a couple of things. I'm just curious because sometimes I'm seeing this, and what they'll do, they'll move this, they'll park these, different areas. And it's almost like they know what the regulations are. You know what I'm saying?
They do know what the regulations are.
And then that's
on
what they
the
do.
tender.
They just keep doing that. And I just think it makes the neighborhood looks junky. I just want a neighborhood that you can just, just drive down and you don't have people like constantly putting stuff like out there.
Well, like I say, just give me a call or email me or send me a picture and I'll investigate it right away.
Okay.
Is there, anybody, Ms. Klein, do you have any comments about the
I
parking?
had just a couple of clarification questions. I guess in section 3127, under the general provisions for off-street parking, I hope I'm looking at this correctly, number 7.
Yes, ma'am?
It seems like it says parking should only be conducted in improved driveways and parking stalls. Shouldn't that be shall instead of should? You think?
Oh. We can change that to shall.
Okay. And then I just had another kind of a quick question. There's a good reference to charging stations that's been added, and it starts out saying parking spaces that meet the minimum requirements may also include charging stations for electric vehicles as indicated on the submitted site plan. But I was wondering, it's got a second sentence here saying planned and provided at the discretion of the applicant. Is that really necessary? Because the first sentence says that they may also include it. That seems to be permissive.
Yes, may is, and if you would like, I can take out the second.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's just a little redundant.
Okay. Sometimes in government, we are accused of being redundant. I don't know where they get that, but,
And then I think I had a question regarding when they're talking about, well, I guess it's on the following page after the charging stations, where they talk about parking being constructed so that spaces are grouped into bays. And then it just goes on to say a parking bay may not be constructed to a length of more than 90 feet without construction of a landscape island. And I think that sounds like another case of we should substitute may for shall.
okay.
And I know I'm sounding like the grammar queen, but
No worries.
No.
No worries.
Okay. And then just a general question, because we have, new parking standards in the section where we have required off-street spaces, and then we have a section now for city center and a section for all other areas.
Yes, ma'am.
And my general question was, how are these rates generated? Did we poll other communities? Is this something that the consultant developed from research?
Mr. Coffey will tell you that was best practices. We have, I went around and did research into different jurisdictions, and he derived these numbers through best practices.
Okay, so he kind of pulled other jurisdictions.
I did, yes.
Oh, okay, to see what they're. So in general, with these proposed ratios, how do we sit relative to other jurisdictions? Are we more consistent with them, or are
yes,
we?
the idea with the city center is because you wanted to get more density for that downtown, and so that's why you have it's more compact. All the other areas, you don't have that. We're still, in that mode of creating that downtown, and so with that, you want it to be more dense.
And then the other areas, I noticed that some of the parking ratios are increased, to varying degrees, both in the residential areas and in some of the business areas as well.
Yes, there was a thought that they were antiquated and they needed to be updated.
To reflect more spaces on the site? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I have a question just from personal experience. Religious institutions, the one space per 4 seats in the main place of assembly or 60 square feet of floor area.
Yes, ma'am.
that's pretty low, I think. I know in my other life, evaluating religious institutions in terms of what that is a standard in other jurisdictions, but I think what a lot of churches and religious institutions is found is that they have to park them more because there's just a lot more activity going on in religious institutions. A lot of times there are other ancillary activities that kind of driving up the ratios, and they've actually found that kind of the sweet spot for parking for a lot of religious institutions is more like 2 to 3 spaces, or 1 per 2 to 3.
Really? I didn't find any of that.
It's not, and it's an interesting thing. It's not reflected in a lot of the zoning ordinances. It ends up being negotiated in special permits for religious institutions.
Oh, okay.
And
Because I did specifically went and looked, and the reason of course, you understand.
yeah, when
the
you look
reason
at the
I did
ordinance, it says 1 per 4, if I remember vaguely, when they were looking at those ratios, that was kind of an average, and what they were trying to include is there are some very, very old churches and religious institutions that had next to no parking, and but you can't say, okay, from this day forward, you have to park, 1 per 2.
Well, there's also
yeah.
a lot of larger churches who do enter into agreements with off-site
Correct.
shopping centers and such, and they do shuttles.
And do shuttle service, yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's right.
so, I mean, it depends, but I just wanted to, with our landmass and our religious institution availability and zoning, I just felt like we needed to be more on the liberal side because we just don't have,
We don't have that many to
Yes.
contend with.
yes.
Let me ask you, I can't remember offhand, I'm not sure in the zoning ordinance, when a religious institution wants to go in, do they, are there instances where they're required to get a special permit? Is
Yes.
that, okay.
Yes,
So there's an opportunity to negotiate if they need more.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, absolutely, because we look at one of the first things we ask is, what is your size of your meeting space, your assembly hall, your sanctuary? And depending on what their, how they meet, depends on how they would park. So that would be required for a conditional use permit, which in fact you'd be able to hone that down sharper, just understanding
Yeah. Oh, okay.
how they perform their services.
I was just going to point out, I mean, I was involved in building a church, in Gainesville, and I did the rezoning for it. And the county required us to have one for every 3 seats.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that was just for that, and then they had additional uses based upon the offices and such which were in there.
Right.
So, we would break that down, but 1 for 3, and I can tell you, I go to church there all the time, and it's
It's
a good thing that they
well-attended,
had
right.
1 for 3, because
well,
They
1
needed
for 4, it would've
every space,
been-
yeah.
And honestly, that's the size of our whole city center area.
Yeah.
But that's my point, is that I labored over that because I was going to go to 1 to 3, but then really, if you take in the amount of the areas that it is permitted with conditional use permit, and understanding the size of the city, I felt 1 to 4 was appropriate. I really did, because I did give that a lot of thought, and I wanted to really look at it.
Sure.
And I looked at that use probably harder than any other.
Yeah.
Well, and then plus you're much more dense residential here, too. People walk to church a lot more often in
That's true.
more
That's true.
compact communities.
Yeah.
Where I am, it's much more of a suburban, people driving to church.
Right, that you're going to be driving to church. And I forgot exactly what the ratio, because it's actually a fraction. It's like, 2 point something, and it can vary, with what kind of ancillary activities are taking place in the church.
And I'll tell you that any time that, especially if we go through a religious institution, we find that they need to have more parking, that would be included. That would be looked at and included. You would have to just,
Okay.
What about the SUP?
Yes, during the conditional use permit. And let's be honest, every religious institution wants to grow.
Right.
And so we have one currently that we talked to from the very beginning, and you start out small, but your hope is to grow. And so as you grow, how are you going to accommodate the parking? So that is, that's talked about on the front end.
Okay. And let me see if I think that was, my only other question, it was just a general question, that when in determining the parking ratios, do we still have a level of confidence that that if we're increasing the parking ratios for some uses, that they can still, if you have an established minimum lot size and you have required open space, if we're increasing the parking ratios, are we pushing some of the other, elements of the zoning ordinance so that it would be difficult for them to fit on the lot?
Well, they do have the ability to get a waiver, for.
A parking waiver, or, okay.
Yeah, we have
Or
well,
some of the other.
we have a
yeah.
few other waivers too. I believe you can do lot coverage waiver, buffers, yeah.
Buffer waivers.
And landscaping?
Perhaps. What about height? Isn't height one of them too?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because I would like to, I get a little nervous because, increasing the parking ratios in this day and age is probably a good thing, but I don't want to look out onto a sea of parking and impervious surface. I don't want to do that at the expense of open space or landscape buffers. But, that said, this is parking ratios for every use in the city, so it's hard to kind of, generalize that concern to everything because it depends on the use. But some of the older shopping centers where they don't have any landscaping at all, especially, landscape parking islands, I'd hate to see it return to that,
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good update. I really do. But it's as all zoning ordinance, it's a fluid document. We can find out it's not working and take it back to the table and scrub it some more.
And scrub it. And I guess the part of the reason for this was issues with residential parking. I didn't do any of the research, but are we in a good place in terms of parking ratios?
I believe so. I believe so because we accommodate for driveways, we accommodate for garages, we make put the CCRs in with the new developments. This is there are issues with parking all throughout the city, but there are issues in all residential developments. Where I live, there's tons of parking issues all the time. I don't think you're ever going to get away with that. People have more cars. Part of the beauty of the original part of the city, how it started off with the subdivision, that was created in the 50s. And if you had a car, you were living large, And we have a lot of homes that don't have any driveways at all, and a lot of them can't even accommodate a driveway if you could afford to put one in. So you have everybody's parking on the street, and we have people that have come to us and said, my neighbor told me I'm not allowed to park here. Well, it's public parking, and so people will all along there. But see, that's something that we can't fix that. But with the new subdivisions that come in and the residential developments that come in, and quite frankly, we're at the end of that until we go to redevelopment. And that's a real possibility, but until that comes, we're pretty much at the end of our residential development, new residential development. So I think that we've made provisions for that as much as we can to try and take some of these, a lot of this zoning ordinance, it's old, it's antiquated, it needs to be refreshed. And I think we're at a relatively good place here.
And another thing, I have a question. I just noticed this stuff because I'm driving in the morning. Where you have the bus stop at City Center, to the left, there's parking there.
Mm-hmm.
What's really sad is when I see the bus, that because people park there, nobody really uses that bus stop because they can't really see. And also because the bus can't really pull off, that kind of backs traffic up. It's almost like it's a useless spot for them to put like a little bus stop enclosure because it's never used. Do you know where I'm talking
Yes,
about? And
yes.
is there a way they can relocate that to a space where it's more usable? Because I've never, ever seen anybody use that, and the bus doesn't even stop, but they couldn't really anyway, because, I mean, the car, you've got 2 cars parked there, I don't think they should allow, I mean, I don't know how it was set up, but it kind of backs traffic up, you know where I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Well,
Yeah.
PRTC is the one that has selected the bus station stops, but also they come out a little bit further because there's a handicap ramp there, and they have buses that will come, and especially if somebody, they need to come
Right.
out further, so away from there, but they can't, there's just no place to pull over on every bus stop.
Yeah.
There is bus stops around the city that, except for the one up on Andrew, all of them are right on the street. And where, in front of the McCourt Building, there is and I'm amazed that there is not, because people are
There's not more
flying coming
accidents.
off of the
Yeah.
Parkway.
Yeah,
And then
it's
this
just-
bus stops, and everybody's like going like this. But that's PRTC that is, I said those initials right this second time. But they're the bus stops and the locations. I can talk to them and find out their usage is there.
Yeah, I mean,
But they
it's-
wouldn't have, I don't see how they would have picked a place to put in a covered.
I can tell you, I mean, and I've, it's like, obviously, never, what kind of, why would you put it in an area? It could be utilized somewhere else. I mean,
City center area?
yeah, it just making, it just makes sense,
I think it's an
right?
issue, the city center not reaching critical mass yet so that you have the ridership.
But, yeah,
Yeah.
I still don't think they should have well, they've got
Yeah.
parking right there. I think that would have to be changed if it did change.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that's a good idea. I mean.
Okay, I'll check into that and get back to you and send you all an email as to the ridership for there. I know in other bus stops, the one on Andrew, on Manassas Drive, that one's always got somebody there. The one in front of Walker Station, always got somebody there.
seen that.
There's the one down on the corner of Railroad and Manassas Drive, always got somebody there. So, I mean, it depends on the time of day and the buses when they run, so I'll check into that and let you know. Okay, so do you want to make a motion about did you open the public hearing? I'm sorry, for the,
I was out in the hall, I don't remember. if you did or not.
did you open the public hearing for the
I did not open
parking?
the public hearing yet. We have been talking about your presentation the entire time.
I'm sorry.
I apologize. The public hearing, it is open for consideration of the zoning text amendments that have been discussed previously. Is there anybody wishing to speak to these changes? Do we have any items that have been submitted for the record?
No, ma'am.
Close the public hearing. Let's see, we can entertain a motion regarding the parking code changes? Anybody? I guess I'll just dive right in. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the changes that we have before us with the edits noted, which are really just,
Documented.
not really substantive in nature. It's really having to do with text changes for clarification.
We'll make those changes, and then the governing body will be hearing this on June 16th.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I-
Opposed? And the motion passes unanimously for those present and voting.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've kept you all late.
We have, for the next time, we have no report of special committees.
Right.
And we come to the Planning Commission update by the planner.
We have a site plan called Creekside at Mosby Ridge that is for by right townhomes. It is, the proffers allowed for 16 townhomes, but they are only going to be fitting 13 in there. So Ron Schools with Schools in Townsend is the engineer for the project. We just recently had a post-submission meeting with him on, and he'll be submitting second submission next month or so. And so we'll be bringing that to you probably at the earliest September or so. If we don't have anything after the July meeting, then we won't meet in August. We won't need to meet in August. I don't see anything on the horizon. But this rezoning has taken up quite a lot of time, as you can imagine, and so we have been in that. And then we've gotten some, the revisions of site plans approved, so thank goodness for that. So we're able to hit some other areas. So the areas of planning, zoning, and economic development are going on their way. So very happy that we're able to button up some of these things. The 8-acre site plan revision was taken care of. I drove past today. They've got several pieces of equipment on site, but I haven't seen any activity. And so we're waiting for them to start clearing and grading that property to put up the park tower and then the standalone daycare. They will be coming in for phase 2 site plan in the future, but I want to see them doing some clearing and grading on this property. There's a lot of little things going on, but otherwise all is well. Walker Station's moving along. I don't know if you noticed, they were starting to go vertical. Palisades it's amazing what it looked like, because now you just kind of forget what it looked like. It's amazing. And Belmont Reserve is at the end of there. They are building 3 more rows of townhouses. And so they're on the closer end of getting completed. Dominion Crossing is still, they've slowed down a little bit. I think I told you all last time, the winter was very harsh to the builders, and so they're playing catch up. But other than that, things are going well. Busy. Lots of people come in to say hey and talk, and it's never dull. But thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, there being no further questions or comments, I would call the meeting adjourned at 20 minutes to 9 o'clock.
Oh, goodness. Thank you very much. And thanks to Jay Johnson for coming. I thought I just knew